Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Get Geek Podcast, where we celebrate geek, nerd, and pop culture. Each week, we deliver the best analysis for fans, by fans, on anything related to movies, TV, video games, comics, anime, and manga. We talk geek. And now, here's the Get Geek Podcast.
Hey, what's going on, y'all denizens of the internet? Welcome to another episode of the Get Geek Podcast. What's up, y'all, from the Get Geek crew? I'm Jose.
This is Wolfie.
AJ.
Eli.
And this is Gina Carano's protege, Walt.
Oh
boy.
I had to put that out there, especially about what we're talking about.
I think we're going to get to that.
Man.
It sounds like we're going to get to
man.
that.
Shots fired.
Before we get to
I can already see how this conversation is going to go.
Well, maybe
Yeah, I
not
know.
protege, but you know,
Yeah.
Wait
she's-
until we
she's
get to
out there with that stuff.
Yeah, a little bit. But we shall discuss it. And before we discuss it, I just want to give our usual spiel and disclaimers. This week, there is a higher likelihood, at least on my end, of sound issues and artifacts because we are recording remotely, as we always are. I am in a cabin in the woods, not to be confused with the movie title. And so I'm here with my girlfriend and my dog, and that was probably just him that you heard shaking a little bit in his cage right now. So sound issues and artifacts today are probably going to be more likely. Please bear with us. And of course, you can give us any feedback and let us know if there's any sound issues, artifacts, or other issues that you have with the podcast that you love so much. And of course, as always, the best way to support your favorite podcast crew is to like, rate, share, and subscribe to the Get Geek Podcast. You can find us where all your favorite podcast platforms are sold. You can find us on all your favorite social media platforms. You can find us if you try. So please try to find us and like, rate, share, and subscribe to the Get Geek Podcast. So yeah, thank you very much for dealing with our disclaimers once again this week, and let's get started. What's our topic for today, guys?
Walt, what is our topic today?
Yeah, tell us.
Not quite sure.
Tell us.
Okay, so the topic for today is something that we've touched upon on some of our previous podcasts.
Yes.
But maybe we've only touched upon it maybe like 5 to 10 minutes. And Wolfie suggested that this would be a great time to talk about it as a podcast episode in whole, because I do believe that this is something that bears talking about. And what we're talking about today is toxic fandom and the ramifications of that, not only now, but going forward. I could just, me personally, there are numerous things that you could draw upon and say, well, this is an example of toxic fandom. You have instances in video games of swatting. That's a weird phenomenon. I remember, fans of Rick and Morty descending down on McDonald's because they wanted those Szechuan packets and literally berating and physically having confrontations with employees when they ran out. You could name a dozen of them. I'm pretty sure you guys can do the same as well.
Yeah. So with that being said, why don't we just go around real quick and I want to know what you guys perceive exactly as toxic fandom. I feel like there's so many different ways, so many different examples, like Walt said, of toxic fandoms. I guess the backlash or the actions caused by the toxic fandom, I guess, almost an epidemic, I would say.
Yeah.
But what do you guys, starting with what's your definition of toxic fandom? If you could put it into one sentence, what is it?
It's interesting because, I before as trying to get prepared for this podcast, the first thing I did was I Googled the meaning of fanatic. And the meaning of fanatic is a person filled with excessive and single-minded zeal, especially for an extreme religious or political cause, religious fanatics. But we use that term not only for religious and political purposes, but we use it for entertainment purposes also. A fan of a project, a fan of a property, is you're a fanatic. You love the property. The problem is when you take that to the next level, and it stops becoming fandom, and it starts becoming bullying, it starts becoming intimidation, it starts becoming harassment. And like I said, we've seen numerous instances of this where people are going around bullying other people about it. You see the forums, you can never go on a forum that doesn't start an argument, whether it be on Twitter or on Quora, on Instagram, or whatever. You've seen instances of fans bullying people off of social media. It's numerous, and toxic fandom is that. It's the harassment, the bullying, the intimidation, the thinking that the property is yours to own. That's what toxic fandom is to me.
Mm. Now, I kind of want to go to Eli actually, because the reason that we're having this conversation, I feel like, is because on our last episode, Eli had such provocative statements over the intended or unintended effect of releasing the Zack Snyder Justice League cut, and his response to the release and the reception and everything, and kind of moving forward where we go from there, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, is what kind of had me like, you know what, let's make this an actual discussion. What about you, Eli? What do you see as the toxic fandom? What is it by definition to you?
Honestly, like toxic toxic fandom is basically like just cyberbullying at to the point, not to the extreme, but sometimes to the extreme. It varies on who it is, but it's cyberbullying. And as you said, Walt, thinking that the property that movie directors, game developers have is yours when it's really not. And then you have like it's taken to the extreme with death threats and all that, and to the point where it can shape the movie industry and so on and so forth.
Jose, your thoughts on it? Exactly what is it to you?
I think toxic fandom is pretty simple. Toxic fandom is believing that all entertainment and media and everything else should represent only you and nobody else. That's it's that simple to
Yep.
me. It's
Yeah,
I am the center of all universe, all the universe when it comes to this fandom, when it comes to this media. That's toxic fandom to me.
What about you, AJ?
Yeah, so I'm gonna follow a pretty similar definition to Eli. It's when like there's just this group of basically like extremists with such an overzealous disposition towards like a particular media or what's it property, and they just kind of fight tooth and nail like it's a real life movement or something like that, and granted, there are some things that, I mean, there are things worth fighting for, but some of these things, they don't have the best intentions behind them. And it makes you wonder how far should you actually be fighting for something like this, as opposed to directing all of that energy towards something arguably more productive. And honestly, yeah, that's toxic fandom to me, at least, is just focusing all your energy in the wrong place, as well as just being completely like over the top, and just this is not good. It's not good at all.
Interesting. I mean, so for me, toxic fandom is everything that you guys said, but the way that I see it is especially now with the sophistication of social media and campaigning and stuff like that, it's the bandwagoning of of one idea or one thought or one opinion that makes it really easy for people to just dogpile on until it becomes too big for the fandom or the property itself or the holders of the property to actually react to it. Because sometimes I feel like, you know, someone might say a comment, on social media, and you have in the comment section a million people like just like and agreeing and reinforcing the commentary and stuff like that, and maybe they don't even really feel like they wholly agree to it, but just because it's so easy to hit like, it creates this huge monster, and it's then becomes like too big to actually tackle and attack. So um now AJ, so for you, it's interesting to me because the I can't really necessarily pinpoint the first time that I experienced the toxic fandom, and I kind of wanted to throw it back to AJ because I'm wondering if you've ever experienced it, or when's the first time that you noticed, the like toxic fandom, and I'm just interested if like there's anything that resembled the toxic fandom base and retribution type of acts and stuff like that in the kaiju world, especially because we got Godzilla and Kong that comes out this week, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
next week, yeah, this upcoming
This
week.
week or next week, I don't remember now. I'm like in a haze right now. So
Yeah, at the time we're
Yes, this
releasing
The
week.
this,
31st.
it should be coming out in a few days. At the time
okay,
of our episode
perfect.
release.
So when's and I want to pose this to everyone, when's the first time that you guys kind of can remember experiencing?
So, well, to answer your question, the kaiju world, I haven't really seen it there, to be honest. Although I'm not saying, like, if there is something there and I don't know about it, that's totally possible. But me personally, I don't know. I haven't really seen that, to be honest. But the first time that I've actually, I saw this and I was like, holy crap, what the hell are they doing? When it comes to toxic fandom was Last Jedi. And specifically what happened
Yeah.
to Kelly Marie Tran.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that was just like, are you serious? Like, is it really? Did you real? That was like, it was so unnecessary. Like, she just completely vanished from social media, and it's just like
Right. Yeah.
so horrible, and it was
I mean,
so
she was getting threats.
ridiculous. Yeah, that too.
Yeah, she was getting threats. She was getting like actual physical threats through social media and stuff like that. It's like Wall said it's I guess like the most apparent form is in cyberbullying. Um, that's yeah that I would say that's one of the most the biggest one. So the Jose.
I will give an example from the generation of AJ and Eli's fathers. It's also Star Wars. Jar Jar Binks, Ahmed Best. When Jar Jar Binks was released in the Phantom Menace in '99, like he received all the same treatment that Kelly Marie Tran received for his portrayal as Jar Jar Binks. Who, okay, he's not anybody's favorite character, really. I mean, there actually is a few people that enjoy him. I didn't hate him, but to really go after the actor, I mean, we see this over and over again. You go after the people that simply fulfill the role, or simply the actors or the actresses or the voice actors or whatever it may be, depending on what you're talking about. And that to me is one of the first examples that I can remember. I was about 19 at the time, of just seriously toxic fandom, just
Mm,
people like people's anger and just violent even tendencies and thoughts when it comes to just a character, which is absolutely ridiculous to me.
And just to jump on your point, it's interesting to note that the actor Ahmad Best that portrayed Jar Jar Binks, he's been very open, especially lately, about the struggles that he had because of that toxicity. To the point where he actually contemplated suicide. And again, these are the consequences for this toxic fandom that's out there. It's really really bad. Think about it. He was portraying. He's an actor, and he was portraying the character as told to him by the director, and
right.
that's
Right.
very important to realize this, because these actors, they don't kind of wing it on their own. They're directed. That's what a director does.
Right. Exactly.
And the consequences of that is that you do the role as intended, and the ire is directed at you. not the director.
Right.
You
Right.
know, the director does get a little bit, but it's really focused on the actor. So the first time that I'm kind of the elder statement of this group here, you know, I actually saw Star Wars in the movie theaters and stuff. That's one of my badges of honor, you know. Um, but
He's talking about the ancient,
yeah,
actual
okay,
Star
Wolfie,
Wars
okay.
original trilogy without any of the updated edits that we all have grown up on.
May
Yeah.
25th, 1977, I
I was-
was in the movie theater.
I was
So,
almost negative.
What were you? Were you
3
like
years
in your
old?
mid-30s at that time?
okay. Thank you, Wolfie. Thank you very much.
I think our parents were at that time. Like,
yeah,
goodness gracious.
exactly. You know, yeah, Jose wasn't even a thought at that time yet.
No.
So,
No, but so yeah. So in the original, did you experience? Is that when you experienced?
No.
Was there? No.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
But it's going to be around the age that Jose experienced his first one, because I'm going to go a little bit further into the future and look at 1989,
Mhm.
and I'm talking about Michael Keaton and Batman.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's
Really?
the
Yes.
first time that I really
I kind of remember that.
and
Kind of.
it wasn't right. It wasn't, and so just
I was
to
only
give
9 at
you
the
a
time, but social
yeah,
media
it was a
wasn't
different
there
time.
to,
It was a
to add
different
to
time,
it, I think.
and so just to kind of lay the groundwork on that, Batman hadn't been a property for a long time. You know, I mean, you've had it was kind of similar in the sense of Star Wars when it came back 30 years after the original trilogy and stuff,
Okay.
and so people were when it was announced, people, especially a lot of Batman fans, were really stoked that we're getting a Batman movie finally. You know, I mean, I think the other property that was at the time, you either had the cartoons, or you had to go back to the 1966 version of Adam West's Batman.
Mm.
But the announcement of Michael Keaton was a huge firestorm at the time. I mean, you know, there were articles written about it in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. Fans were in an uproar because they were saying, "How is
Really?
Mr. Mom? How is Beetlejuice
Oh.
going to be Batman?" You know, they literally thought that at first it was a joke,
I mean, he was generally
and
comedic.
then when they realized this is
at that
actually
point, right?
happening, there was actually a written petition, because remember, social media didn't exist back then, right? But imagine how that could have played out now. I mean, literally, there is a possibility that we never get Michael Keaton as Batman
I'm genuinely surprised
if it happened now. And I think one of the things that you guys touched upon is really the role of social media in this, because before, if you wanted to petition, it was paper and pen, and like I said, Michael Keaton, look how it turned out. But imagine if it happened now, they would have kicked him off the project, brought in somebody else, and you know, that would have been it, and we never would have gotten the Michael Keaton Batman, which actually turned out to be not so. It turned out to be well.
I mean,
But
for
Pretty good.
for the times, it ended up kind of being a little bit groundbreaking. Showing
Right.
like such
Yeah.
a dark, take on a superhero, when everything you've seen in media, from like Superman, Wonder Woman, and anything that has to do with like comic book heroes, is everything being like very, you know, hopeful and bright, and like, I'm a kid's, hero and stuff.
Mhm.
And obviously through Tim Burton's mind and through the actual, representation of Batman in the comics, you can't really have that on screen and be true to character.
Right. Even with Tim Burton, there was some backlash of having him directed as well, because Tim
Yeah.
Burton hadn't been known for those type of
Right.
movies at the time,
Right.
so he was kind of an unknown quantity. You know, he had done some previous things, and again, lighthearted, and everybody thought that this was going to be a joke. So you know, it was one of those things where it's, you know, people were literally calling for Michael Keaton to be taken off the project. So, and Tim Burton to a certain extent.
Do you remember what the reaction to Jack Nicholson was? Was it
It
similar?
was the same thing. Again, it wasn't as bad as Michael Keaton, but you know, people were questioning, you know, his his involvement as the Joker. And I believe, if I remember correctly, some of the comments were made by Michael Keaton himself, and I think that kind of amplified the whole thing. Was that
Mm,
Jack Nicholson was going to play the Joker much like he played Beetlejuice. It was going to be over the top. It was going to be crazy, and people didn't like that at the
mm,
time. They
yeah,
really didn't. You know, they were afraid that the movie was going to be the next incarnation of the Adam West show, where it was going to be goofy, where it wasn't going to be taken seriously, where it was
interesting.
going to be this
Yeah,
weird
yeah.
thing that they did not want at all.
Little did
What
they
about
know.
what about Eli? I'm interested in your in because you've only Eli. I mean, I guess AJ as well, but Eli much more specifically has grown up solely in the internet age. I mean, we had the internet when Eli was born, right?
Yeah, we go from the youngest for the oldest to the youngest. He was around the time where the internet was really um
Booming.
booming at the time. I mean, it was still kind of new, but it was already out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was already kind of like turning into basically what it is today, which is
Right.
essentially a utility.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
what do you remember the first time that you experienced toxic fandom?
I don't exactly remember it, but I know what it was basically. I know generalized it was the YouTuber fan base. Because on YouTube, a lot of
Hmm,
YouTubers receive a lot of
interesting.
hate. Generally like in comments and stuff.
You know what? You're right about that.
Hmm.
Yeah, and
Yep.
then it's just that's where I first experienced it. You have a lot of YouTuber apology videos, which is actually made fun of, to a point, and I think that's where I first experienced
Yeah.
toxicity.
I do, I have to kind of hop on that real quick because that is also,
Sorry.
and I didn't even think about this, but YouTube is one of those places, YouTube and Twitch and streaming sites.
Yeah.
These are some of the places that we kind of see the hopefully unintended consequences, the worst unintended consequences of this toxic fandom and the cyberbullying and stuff like that, which is a lot of these people that start YouTube channels and Twitch channels to have kind of start like some sort of amateur streaming career that then get harped on by their own fans or people that are just kind of piling on.
Yeah.
You see a lot of these people that end up unfortunately hurting themselves to a point where they don't come back, obviously, to be straight up, they take their lives and stuff like that because they can't deal with it, you know and that's one thing. I'm this entire time I'm like thinking about, like, the toxic fan base from the perspective of huge media, but YouTube and Twitch and streaming sites, that's also huge media, even if it's at the amateur level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of an important thing to note.
The YouTube comment section is pure haterade. Absolutely pure haterade. I mean, yeah. You can think about like all kinds of examples, not just on YouTube, but like of people being bullied in this day and era. I mean, internet has a lot to do with it. You'd think of like totally off the top of my head example, but that kid who like cried about leaving Britney Spears alone. It's a weird video, sure, but like, what was all the necessity to kind of like go after that person for a simple video? And that's YouTube is something that really, 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 really definitely I think contributes to it, because like you all said as well, another point to make is that a lot of YouTube videos. I mean, some people even create a YouTube career on the other side of the coin from what you were saying, Wolfie, I should say, is they create a YouTube career simply to troll things, simply to hate on things.
Right.
So that's something else
Yeah,
that
that's true. Yeah.
definitely
Mhm.
contributes to it.
Like
So
huh? Oh. Well, I think like I just thought of this off of the top of my head, but I think like one of the most perfect examples is when Jacksepticeye, I don't Jacksepticeye, whatever, right?
Septiceye.
Septiceye, right? His dad passed away, and his fans started making memes about it. It's like that's genuinely disgusting.
That's horrible.
Like why the hell would you make fun of something like that? Because he's actually going through pain, and then you're just taunting him basically, and like you're not leaving a good, I guess you're not really helping with the situation that he's going through, right?
Right.
No, you're hurting. You're making
Yeah.
things worse. You're making it impossible for someone to grieve.
It adds
You
fuel to
know,
the fire.
that's terrible. Yeah.
But I think that again, we go back to this whole thing about social media and comments and things of that nature, and what social media does is it emboldens people to make these type of comments because really there's no consequences. Before,
There's no retribution for
back
them.
back in the days, at least in my time, and I'm gonna sound like an old timer here, but you exactly. I'm looking at Jose in our chat here, and you made a comment, and if somebody didn't like it, you're sleeping on the pavement.
Yep.
You're
Punched in the
you're
face.
knocked out. You know what I'm saying?
You better square up.
Exactly. If you're gonna make those type of comments, you better have something to back that up.
Yeah,
And
that's almost. It's not great, but
Mhm.
it's almost less toxic than hiding behind like some
Well,
anonymous wall, because at least you
it,
have to face the person that you're like denigrating. You know what I mean?
right, but
Violence isn't great, but still.
it also leads into this other issue where it's like, okay, well, maybe you don't voice it, but that toxicity is still there, and we see that in politics. And I'm not gonna jump into this because I don't want to get political
Yeah, that's a
on
good
this
point.
fan cast, but you know the whole thing is that there's a lot of deep-seated sentiment, whether it's fandom or political and stuff like that, and once you give a voice to that, it's impossible to kind of tamp that down.
Yeah.
Once you let the cat out of the bag, that cat ain't going back. you know
It's
Yeah.
interesting because my experience with like the these kind of effects of the toxicity, um obviously I've experienced of, or I've seen, there's plenty of examples out there, but the oldest example that I could think of happened kind of after my time, right? Because I got into anime and Evangelion um after it aired, but upon research, right, like I fell in love with Evangelion. I saw every single episode. I fell in love with everything about it, including the psychological, twists at the end, and the impact that it had on me growing up. And then as I research more about the anime to try to understand it, I find out that this anime experienced toxicity in both forms, from both sides rather. When the anime was airing, okay, the anime was just not doing well enough that the studio basically cut funding, and they didn't have enough money to necessarily finish the anime. So Hideki Anno decided to continue to, and in order to finish the anime, he would just, do whatever he can, find ways to kind of cut corners, extend scenes, to make them a little bit longer. And then that ended up kind of translating to him representing some of the depression that he was going through into the actual anime itself, because of the success of Evangelion Real Time, which ended in which gave us rather a show that started off as a kaiju mecha, anime that's typical with great animation, awesome action scenes, and then halfway through it turns into a dialogue and conversation about like depression and self-awareness and identity and stuff like that, all because of what he was dealing with real time. And then because of the way that it ended, the fan base then started hating Ano because they didn't end it the way that he wanted, and they would they would graffiti and bomb and egg the studio, the Gainax studio where it was where it was all done. They sent them like hate mail and death threats through mail and stuff like that, just because of the way that he ended the show, and it ended up causing Hideki Anno to like redo the endings in a way that might appease the fans a little bit better. And even that ending people hated as well, you know, which is why they're kind of doing the Evangelion rebuilds now as well. So it's interesting because we have like the same thing that happened with Zack Snyder, where you have the reason that we got Joss Whedon in the first place is because there were so many of the fans that hated the Zack Snyder vision and everything, so to speak, when he was filming and all that stuff. And then now that same fan base is what brought back Snyder, and we're dealing with it right now. So I kind of want to pivot a little bit. I had a bunch of other questions and thoughts that I wanted to ask the group, but I did. There's one question that I want to ask, and I don't want to spend too much time, but I just a real quick question: can you guys think of any time that you guys or us, we as people, may have inadvertently contributed to the toxic fan base?
Well,
Hmm.
I'm gonna be honest. Technically, there is a time,
Okay.
and that was when, again, it's fair because we all hated this movie, but in a sense, we basically asked for it nonetheless in the same way that people asked for the Snyder Cut.
Oh man.
Our hate of Rise of Skywalker
That's where he was
Yeah.
going.
and how we wanted to strike that from the canon
Oh,
and
gosh.
basically redo the sequels.
We are kind of guilty on that aspect as well.
We are,
you
aren't
know?
we?
Yeah.
We are.
So
Daisy really is another one that removed himself from social media because of
did she?
the fan base.
Yes.
Yeah.
She
Oh,
did.
I didn't
Okay.
even
Yep.
know that.
I didn't realize
Yeah,
that
she
either.
removed herself because people hate. She's hated, and the thing is that she's still dealing with it because you can't get away from the memes. But she hates the fact that there's all these memes about how terrible she was.
Isn't it remarkably interesting? And I don't want to get too deep into this because we're going to get super political if we do. But isn't it interesting that all of these examples of toxic culture are directed at women, minorities? Where where was the toxicity for George Lucas for creating Jar Jar Binks? Why didn't
Well,
he
there
get
was,
any
was,
hate for
there
that?
was. To
was,
be
yeah.
fair,
Was a
to be
little-
fair,
yeah.
when Jar Jar came out, there was a lot of hate for Lucas as well.
To the level of Ahmed Best, though, I think that
Well-
was a whole other level of vitriol directed
That's
specifically at him.
true.
I will say this
Yeah.
though, his prequel trilogy was not well received at all, and a lot of people
No.
did not want to see George Lucas come back. And to be fair, I'm not going to speak to his mind personally, but that may have been part of the reason why he sold his property to Disney, because he's like,
Yeah.
I have a specific vision, I put it out there, and I'm getting crap for it. I don't want to deal with this anymore. Maybe
Well,
it's time for me to cash out and say, here, somebody else take it.
So
I'll put my
that is
feedback into it, but I don't want to deal with this anymore.
interesting enough, though. See, this didn't start for George Lucas with the prequels. This started with his original trilogy. Okay.
Yeah.
Right, especially Return of the Jedi, because Return of the Jedi, a lot of people love the film now, but it was treated as kind of like a cash cow,
Yeah.
especially with the Ewoks and stuff like that.
2 Death Stars.
Yeah, you know what? The accusation was that he did Return of the Jedi specifically for merchandising purposes. He wanted to be able to sell toys. He wanted to be able to sell Ewok plushies. He wanted to do all of that stuff.
Right.
So,
Right.
you're right. This began then, but then it got even worse with the prequel
Right.
trilogy, and especially when he started changing a lot of the scenes from the original trilogy as well.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but at the end of the day, like this leads into the next topic that I want to actually talk about, which is who owns the creative IP. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, George Lucas, his whole argument was that, like, he is the creator of Star Wars. He puts it out there, and it's either going to be well received or not well received.
Yeah.
But his biggest issue was directly with the fan base, even with the original trilogy, where he's like, he doesn't want to be beholden to anyone telling him what to do about his creation.
Yeah, they
You know?
literally call him the creator.
So when it gets to a property like Star Wars that has such a huge fan base, at what point, if it ever does, at what point does it actually becomes the general public's IP, and or does it forever stay with the creator? And that being said, does it stay with the creator and the studio, or is it solely the creators? Because there's a big issue with Disney as well, where like they're buying up all these IPs, but then they want to dictate what's, from a creative standpoint, what's best for their pockets. And I think that's what we saw in the Rise of Skywalker as well.
I think a really good a good example of that may not be Disney, but really Warner Brothers, because Warner Brothers has been infamous in the studio
That's true.
interference
That's true.
of
That's very,
the
very true. Yeah.
the DC movies.
Yeah.
I mean, perfect examples besides the Zack Snyder Justice League. You look at Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad was a movie that became a literal Frankenstein because David Ayers had a specific vision. And it's interesting because the movie was changed not because of what they saw, it was because of the great response that fans had to the trailer. And WB, in their infinite wisdom, said, you know what? Let's let the trailer company cut the film. And well,
Jeez.
we saw how great that was, So I think WB
Interesting.
is
Yeah,
WB
I didn't
really,
realize that that's what happened.
yeah. The trailer was done by this company called Trailer Park,
Right, right. I remember.
right?
I know right now.
And
Yeah.
they actually did ask that company, you did such a great job with the trailer, can you take a look at this movie and cut it up? And that's why it's such a Frankenstein when you watch it, because
Oh my
it
gosh.
starts here, but then and you have that really great introduction, but then after that it becomes this mishmash of just things being thrown together and cut and edited in really weird ways.
Yeah. It still happens in Disney properties, though,
No,
to a
no
pretty
doubt.
significant amount. But there's a divide
Right.
there. Think about it, if you think about it this way, because with the MCU, I feel like the amount of success that they've achieved, Kevin Feige has a little bit of a open book to do a little bit more of what he wants to do, and
He's
to
earned
allow
it.
his directors to do what he wants to do. But remember, your Rogue Ones and your Solos, where Christopher Miller and Phil Lord got completely kicked off the project because Disney was not really liking what they were doing, which is odd because what is it? The following year they released Into the Spider-Verse, which was universally loved by everyone. So it kind of makes me sad that we didn't get to see what they were going to do with Solo.
Well,
Because I mean, I
this
know that some of us enjoyed that movie. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but like,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
that there's that divide there between how different aspects of Disney handle their response to sort of a toxic fandom, because all of that really deals with making money, and making money in a way is always going to be a response to toxic fandom because of,
I
well,
mean, it just
Disney
they're going to boycott
also
it.
in the MCU they've done that as well, because just look at the Ant-Man franchise.
Right.
That I forgot the original director. I
Edgar
can't
Wright.
remember.
Edgar Wright, isn't it?
Yes,
Edgar Wright, and he's
he
coming
had
back
he
for
had a
the third one.
vision. Yeah, no, I think it's still Peyton Reed that's doing the third one.
Wait, no. It
But
was Peyton Reed on the first one, actually. I think.
and the second one,
Was it? No,
yeah,
I don't remember. I don't remember the name. Then
Peyton
I
Reed
must be
did both
confused.
films, and I
Okay.
believe he's slated to do the third one as well.
I
I could
remember
check
Edgar
that
Wright.
on Google
I
just
remember
to
something about
verify.
Edgar
But
Wright returning. But go ahead. I'll look that up while you try to figure out, or while
yes,
you make your point, I should say. Yeah.
but like I said, and I'm going to throw this to the kids afterwards. But like I said, the MCU does have examples of that as well. There are directors that come on and they pitch their vision to Kevin Feige, and they start working on it, and then somewhere along the lines it doesn't kind of mesh with the MCU format, and they're let go. So it happens a lot in Star Wars, but it does happen in the MCU as well. Um, Boys, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised because Marvel seems, it's like you said, Marvel has a really good track record. And I didn't even think of it when you brought up Solo. I completely forgot about that. Um, as
Yep.
far as like toxic fandom goes, though, I don't, there wasn't really any hand in like the, was,
No. But we're just talking about studio interference at this point.
yeah,
Yeah.
because the conversation is still like who owns the property,
yeah,
right?
that,
Because
yeah.
I feel like the fans at some like in some ways, big huge fan bases feel like they own it. Like, hey, like you need to, just like Jose said before, you need to do what I say because this is what I like. This is where I think that collectively, that's basically what they're saying. This is what I think that that this film or this story or this character should go. So
Yeah. I personally think it should always stay in the hands of the creators because, I mean, yes, there are certain things fans would like to see, and and some of them, hey, it's actually pretty cool what they want to see. But when it comes to And it comes to like something I mentioned in our last podcast. So the creators are the ones who bring these visions to life and bring us the things that, we end up loving. It becomes in a way de-incentivizing for them to, if fans have like such a stronghold over what they're allowed to create and what they're not allowed to create, it's going to stifle creativity overall. Like it's just going to be a detriment to the whole movie industry. Hey, you could even say TV show industry too. um like no one's going to want to make anything anymore because there's going to be this constant fear of, oh, well, will they like it, or am I going to put something out only for it to be retracted and basically stricken from canon or whatever. Like there's going to be that constant fear, and no one's going to want to make anything anymore, and that's honestly tragic if you ask me.
Yeah, I would say to I'll keep it short, but I think that it belongs in the hands of the creator unless you get a situation where the creator sells the property and then it becomes the studio's property. As much as I'm not a huge fan of necessarily the studio model of creating these things, I mean, if George Lucas sells Star Wars, George Lucas ain't in charge of Star Wars anymore. It's that simple. Unless Disney wants to bring him on to consult, which in fact it seems like they've done with a lot of things recently. So it stays a little bit a property of his. But yeah, it shouldn't belong to the fans. If the fans want their stories to turn out the way that they want, write fan fiction. Just write fan fiction and stop bothering the creators of these properties that you love. And then when they make one small decision that you disagree with, all of a sudden the entire thing gets tanked. That's completely silly. How many times have we had like small issues with a movie that doesn't ruin the experience for any of us, whereas some people might just go
Right.
nuclear on those moments.
So there is obviously there's always two sides to the same coin, right? Um, has toxicity ever benefited us as consumers? I mean, again, we did get Zack Snyder's Justice League, and we got justice for Ray Fisher very specifically, who was pretty much shafted by Joss Whedon, and Warner Brothers essentially. I mean, is there any benefit to this kind of, I guess you can call it pseudo grassroots kind of movement towards that? And I see Jose's hand up, but I do want to send this to Eli first. To you, in your mind, has this ever benefited in any way whatsoever?
No. I mean, yes.
It is a difficult question.
Yeah.
It's a difficult question, right? Because yes, I wanted the Zack Snyder cut. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the way that we got it, do the ends justify the means?
What about
I
Sonic?
think Sonic, yeah.
I was
Sonic,
going to
that's
say
another
that.
one.
So
I
here's
think
the thing.
Sonic is a good example of a pretty good way of using your fan power,
Yeah.
because it was more making fun of the CGI character. They didn't start attacking the production company. They didn't start attacking the company that created the special effects. They were just like, hey, we don't like the design. And then immediately in what I think is a healthy dialogue, because the character design is essential to Sonic the Hedgehog, the company changed it, and everybody was very, very happy with the result and with the movie in the end. So like sometimes small examples like that I think can be slightly beneficial, because I think we all agree that Sonic originally looked horrific. So
Yeah.
yeah, it could be beneficial to a certain extent. I think in general though, when you give that much power to any kind of mob, it's not a benefit to any kind of like sort of one note mob that has one thing in mind or one issue about something that they think destroys the entire project
I
or whatever
totally
it
agree
is.
with that. I totally agree with that. I think that the results of of um of that is good, but I think that it doesn't help with the whole problem of fans trying to push for something in a way, because it's the same thing as I said before, last podcast, right, with the Snyder cut. By doing something like that, you're pushing for a good result, but at the same time you're pushing for more interference from fans. So I think.
Eli,
Huh?
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Would you have been okay had Sonic not been changed? Do you think that would you have been okay with like the film still had Sonic's CGI image not been altered?
See, here's the thing.
Honest opinion here.
Yeah,
Honest
honest
opinion.
opinion. I think that I would be not okay with that because
Really?
because honestly, it looked crappy. It looked really crappy.
I'm
Like
I'm
Does
actually
the
showing him the picture
to
now
the
just so that it
all right?
refreshes
I
his
understand
memory.
that, but does the film on its own not stand on its merits? If everything else was as good as the film was, because to me, Sonic was uh, portrayed greatly by, the acting, everything. Jim Carrey was amazing. The special effects were awesome. With the exception, obviously, of the original design, which I personally didn't have too much of an issue with. I mean, yes, it wasn't, video game accurate, but I was okay with that. You know what I mean? Because if what you're saying is true, then I feel like there really is no way to solve the toxic fandom if you would still not watch it, right?
yeah, I totally agree with that. And I mean,
Would you have at least given it a chance?
no,
What?
no.
Wait,
That was
I
you
think
wouldn't
that's
have
more fair,
hold
though.
on, you wouldn't have watched the movie if
no,
Sonic looked
no,
like
no.
this?
I totally would have watched the movie, but I mean, I just can't. I can't with that because it looks
Oh
so
man.
looks so bad.
But I think once you watch it,
Oh
you'll
man.
get that initial reaction, and then after that, it kind of washes away, wouldn't you? Wouldn't
It
you
I
think?
think
it
that's okay,
washes
though.
away, but it just leaves. I
I
mean,
think you're.
especially since Sonic is technically for kids in a way, because a lot of kids like. Okay, no,
No.
okay, no,
Sonic is
no.
for our
It's
generation.
no,
You
hold
didn't grow
on,
up on
hold on, hold
Sonic.
on,
I grew
hold
up on
on,
Sonic.
hold
Sonic is
on.
my favorite.
Okay, hold on,
I
hold
was
on.
in I was in Team Sonic when it came to Mario versus
Yeah, but
Sonic.
no. What I'm saying is like a lot of kids are going to see this movie, so don't you think that they would like be horrified by something like this?
I mean, it sounds like you were horrified.
Yes, I
It sounds
am.
like you had
That looks
nightmares.
disgusting. But
Oh man,
all in all,
Sonic?
that sounds kind of toxic.
The first Sonic looked like he was going to eat small children to power his like running ability.
Oh
He
my
just
god!
looked weird.
Hold on, I
Well,
need
here's
to
the
Google
thing.
this real quick.
Here's the thing.
I
Here's the
need to
thing.
remind myself.
While you do that, so
look
we'll
at look
see.
at
not
the
that
look at the
bad.
video
it
chat.
is.
Look at the video chat.
You know-
It's not that bad.
Well,
He
here's the
looks
thing.
like he's gonna eat little children. What
Look-
in the world?
Look at his teeth,
That is
man.
kind of
You don't see
scary.
his
The-
teeth
yeah,
in
the
that photo.
teeth,
The teeth are
especially
horrible.
the teeth. The teeth is bad.
You know
You
what?
know?
What I don't have, why I didn't have an issue
Oh,
necessarily with
God.
this though, because this was more an idea of if you didn't want to see Sonic looking like that, these fans were more likely to vote with their wallets. Yeah, there was a social media backlash, sure, but again, I think it was still something that was a little more like, hey, we don't like the look of the character, and we probably won't watch this movie. Not like you're canceled, you should die. Let's kill Sonic the Hedgehog. Jim Carrey should go to hell for this movie coming out with Sonic looking that way. You know what I mean?
Walter's shoving Sonic's face
Yeah.
in my face.
I mean, look at
I'm
him.
okay with that Sonic.
He
I'm
looks like
totally okay with Sonic.
He looks like a mole rat. He doesn't look like Sonic the Hedgehog. And with Sonic the Hedgehog's look, it's so iconic. If you make it look that different, it's pretty bad.
Understand.
But I mean, it's not about like whether we like it or not, right? It's about whether or not this is something that is a good thing in terms of fandoms. And I think it's not.
And
So I think it's a better example among the examples of how fandoms deal with it.
Well, one thing that I will say is that I think that the way the Sonic backlash happened. Oh God! All right. I get your point. Walt. Jesus Christ! For those of you guys just listening, Walt is literally just shoving. He zoomed in on Sonic's, human-like teeth, which is very weird.
It's an
And he's
uncomfortable
just shoving it in my face.
feeling. It's like the uncanny valley.
I understand that. I get it, and I understand. The thing is that for me, like, I will take things with, I'll take some of the bad with the good if the good outweighs it. But I don't know if it's gonna outweigh it until I watch it. To me, that's how I look at it as a dinner, as a dish at a restaurant. If I get a dish with 3 or 4 items on it, I might love the steak and the sauce and some of the veggies, but I might hate the salad. Doesn't mean that the plate was bad.
Yeah, but
Hey,
if
Gabe,
the
but
trailer,
let me ask you a
for
question,
that
though.
dish had teeth, you would probably not want it.
Yeah, and let me ask you this. I know that the film turned out great. I think we can all agree that's one of the best video game adaptations to date, right?
It's the best
Yeah, video game.
by
And we're
metrics.
getting a
It
sequel
is
too,
Right,
right?
video game movies have had a bad rap over the years, but let me
true.
ask you this: um, the it's more of a point, and you know what? It's unfortunate because we really didn't see a lot of that iteration with Sonic.
Hmm.
That first one that came out. But
Hmm.
would you have found him if he's so out there like that? Would you have found him kind of distracting to the point that it kind of takes you out of the film? I mean, I think
I don't.
that could be the issue with regarding to this is like you look at Sonic and it's kind of the same thing with the whole Josh Sweden and Superman and Mustache Gate, and things of that nature, and
Stashgate.
That's true.
CGI that looks really really bad in a film.
W-
Sometimes those things can take you out of the film no matter how
That's
good the storyline is. You look at something that looks so bad on the screen that it's like I can't take it seriously. I mean,
but
maybe that's one of a feature of this Sonic thing.
but see, the thing is that to me, we'll never know truly because
Right.
the thing is that
We
it's
on-
only distracting
we only got the one
if
trailer, right? I think, or did
right.
we
But the
even
thing
get
is,
a trailer?
yeah, we got a trailer. That's
We,
how everyone found out about it. Yeah.
okay.
The thing is that's how we got the teeth. the thing is the thing is that
And
we'll
posters.
never know, first of all, but second of all, it's not, you got to remember that it's not just the story, it's also the performance by the voice actors, right? Because if the voice actor does due diligence, then over time you get used to things, you know what I mean? Like when you it's like sticker shock, right? Like you
Hmm.
see it the first time you see it, you're like just in shock, but then the more you see that, the more comfortable you are with the price of something, and that's kind of the same thing that you'll have here. The more that you see Sonic on screen, if it's going to be a 2-hour film, the first time that you see him might shock you, and then as the film goes on, if the performance is good and the story is captivating, you'll put the distractions to the wayside. It's the distraction in the Snyder cut, in Justice League, with the mustache gate and everything. It's there because the rest of the film did not stand on its own.
It was also really bad CGI, and
It was terrible CGI. But
it's
there's
amazing
films
that
that have really bad
YouTubers,
CGI too, though, that are good. I can't think of right now, but there
yeah,
are films that have really bad CGI that are still really good.
but it's amazing that YouTubers can create a better version of Superman than um the actual
Justice League.
studio did. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I'm gonna throw it to Jose real quick, and then I got one more point that I have for the crew.
Actually, no. Go ahead. Somebody made my point already.
Oh,
After
okay.
after I raised my
Perfect.
hand, so you can continue on to the next one. Mhm.
So, all right. So then, finally, the last thing that I kind of want to bring up is, you know, what's the future of the current toxic fan base meta, right? Like meta being like what's actually going on right now, what's popular right now. Right now, what's popular is to like jump on a hashtag train and then essentially threaten to boycott, a property unless they make the changes that the majority of the fans, at least that are being voiced on the internet and social media, um, as long as their demands are met, they won't boycott the film and stuff like that. Um, what's the future of this, and does it get better or does it get worse? And I want to kind of throw in that as well. Do the studios that hold these IPs, these properties, or the companies or that produce these the products that we consume, do they have a responsibility to address and try to solve the toxicity that we're seeing in the fan base and its repercussions? Like, does YouTube have a responsibility to try to figure out what to do about the comment section and the hate that they see? Does Disney have a responsibility to defend Kelly Tran, right? So and I want to throw this to AJ. um what do you feel like? What's the future of this whole phenomenon that's going on?
Hon-
Does it get better? Does it get worse?
Honestly, I really do think they should be somewhat. They should hold these people somewhat accountable. Like, you honestly can't, like, if you choosing to ignore this kind of stuff, just it reflects really badly, in my opinion, on the, I guess, media provider. Would that be the right word?
Yeah.
So like, they got to come up with at least some kind of system. Like, okay, you get three strikes depending on what you say. If it's like really, really vitriolic, no, you don't even really get a chance. You're just being an a hole. Excuse my French. So you're gone. Um, like there really shouldn't be any place for that. If you want to agree disrespectfully, by all means, but to make it personal and just honestly try to drag someone down and into the mud like that shouldn't be acceptable. Honestly, it really shouldn't.
I think it's absolutely on studios to do something about this kind of toxicity. I think it also in many cases it should be a slight responsibility of the rest of the cast. And I know that that's a slightly controversial statement, but the thing that kind of gives me that thought and that idea is that I remember very recently when there was a big backlash against Chris Pratt, of all people, basically for just being a conservative, which is no good reason for a backlash to begin with, right? But immediately, like every cast member of the Marvel movies, Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans and everybody else came to his defense. Nobody did that for Kelly Marie Tran. Nobody did that for Ahmed Best. Nobody did that for Daisy Ridley. Nobody spoke up for them in any capacity, whether it's the studios or their co-stars. And I think it's definitely more on the studio to basically make a statement. Like, look, we support our actress, even if it's something that seems fairly superficial. You have to show a sign of support because you're an employer. If you're an employer, you have to support your employees as well. Like, I think that that's just a general good piece of etiquette when you're working with someone, when someone's working for you. But yeah, you have to protect your employees in these instances. I mean, who would want to work for your company ever again if you just allow them to be harassed by these fandoms? I mean,
Yeah.
Kelly Marie Tran will probably never do Star Wars again. Daisy Ridley will probably never do Star Wars again. I mean, appearances maybe, but like the toxicity is just so. I mean, when you have to quit social media to get away from it, that is a scary, scary thought. And so again, the studios need to do more to speak out against those fandoms and let them know, like, hey, that's not okay. We're making these movies for everybody, and these are people who are just helping us to fulfill this vision and finish this movie, create this movie. If you want to put it on anybody, put it on us. And I don't think that's ever going to happen. I'm not holding my breath, but there needs to be a greater emphasis on doing something about these toxic fandoms. And I don't know either if a solution is to ignore them when they want something, because again, I think that there's a slightly positive aspect to a certain extent when fans make certain suggestions. Like I said, I thought Sonic the Hedgehog was a fairly benign example that wasn't that much of a big deal. But then again, like everyone has said here, like we all know, to the reason we're having this conversation, you have stuff like the Snyderverse where the fandom was incredibly toxic. You have the new Restore the Ayer cut that's coming up now that will probably be incredibly toxic as well. We're getting the Restore the Snyderverse hashtags. Who knows where that's going to go? And I just see a lot of negativity coming out of these situations that I think, yeah, definitely these studios have to address it for sure. Something has to be done.
What about you, Eli?
So I think that the toxicity, well, it's always gonna be there, and I think that honestly, there is a way, but it all depends on what you're directing at. Because if you're directing at a movie as a whole, I don't think that. Sorry, I don't think that toxicity is ever gonna just disappear. But when it's directed at a specific actor or director, I think it's good to sort of protect them from that sort of toxicity because perfect example, what's his name, Jar Jar Binks actor.
Ahmed
Best.
Best.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was going through some tough stuff. Like he even contemplated suicide, and I think that it would be better if you could sort of, I guess,
He suffered silently.
yeah, he
That's
suffered
that's the
silently.
interesting thing too.
I mean, it was also during a time when social media was still like a very new thing, you know. So there wasn't really a way like nowadays. People have at least some sort of format to address it from a press standpoint, just because they know other people that have gone through this stuff. But my best didn't really have like any idea of how to deal with the toxicity,
Hmm.
right? I do want to ask you, Eli, do you have any idea or how would you solve it? If you had all the powers in the world, okay, bar none, okay, you're an eternal or you're the watcher, I don't know. Like if you had all the powers at your disposal, how would you solve the 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 issue of the toxic fandom?
Well, see, here's the thing. I don't think that there is any way, even if you did have all the power in the
Even
world, because
really
yeah, because
interesting.
there's no way for you to silence someone without honestly taking away their rights. Yes, they're abusing their rights, but you're taking it away from them, and I don't think that's not fair. It doesn't matter who; it's
Mm.
not fair either way. So
Well,
silencing someone, well, yeah,
I think that situations like death threats need to be handled by authorities. I think that that's
yeah,
something that I think that's something that needs to be handled immediately. And I'd like if you're online anonymously threatening to kill people, I don't care if you're trolling. There's something wrong with you. And even if you don't get arrested, maybe the cops should come and pay you a visit. I mean, I'm not saying again, like Eli said, it's skirting a thin line between taking away people's rights, but death threats are not okay. And
yeah. I
somebody
think
needs
that
to address it. Some authority needs to address those kinds of situations.
honestly, like for something like that, there should be a way to like block that sort of thing. Because I know on stuff like Twitch and YouTube,
Yeah.
if you have they have like the whole community guidelines where if you
Yeah.
put a comment that's abusive to somebody, you can just ban them. And I think that while that's easy to do on YouTube and Twitch, I think that's not necessarily easy to do on social media.
You
I
can.
mean, like,
Twitter.
You
not
can.
even that. You could just, okay, I got banned on this account. I have one of like 1,000 accounts I can
Yeah,
use. Like
right.
Yeah.
that's not
I mean,
really solving the problem.
there is another issue too that like the damage is already done, right? I send you hateful mail, you block me, but you already read it. You
Yeah,
already got influenced by what
Right.
I said. That doesn't necessarily solve it, right? So, I mean, I would say that I mean, this is why I have a love-hate relationship with social media. Social media allows us to kind of connect with you guys out in the world. But if it was up to me, I mean, I would I basically I don't want a comment section on anything. Let people put out their stuff into the world and then leave the comment section alone. Keep your opinions to yourself.
I
If you want
agree.
to send me an opinion, you can email me the opinion. You can, maybe have some sort of communication. But the biggest issue that I have is when people put the opinion out there just so that they see everyone out there in the world look at their opinion. That's what's called a troll.
Hmm.
They're doing this just for everyone's views. Um, you know, hopefully, I don't know, maybe Walt has an idea of what to do as the elder statesman, as someone that has had to, you know, censor things in the upbringing of his children and protect his family and stuff. Do you have any idea of how you would solve it?
Quite honestly, I really, really don't because
Oh my god.
But well,
No
here's
hope.
the thing. You kind of touched upon something that I was going to mention. And I think we've seen that happen also, where, you know, people jump on certain posts and they troll people, and you end up having to block the entire post of comments. You know, and the thing about social media is, and a thing that should be great about social media is that this is a way to interact with some of your favorite celebrities, right? That's kind of the allure where, before you didn't have that level of interaction with people, right? It was just, if you saw him, if you saw a person, at a restaurant, you know, you may approach them and say, "Hey, I love your work." Social media kind of opened that up a little bit to everybody in terms of now, I'm following Chris Evans. He said something. I wanna say something in response to that, and a lot of it is, you know I want to say a lot of it can be positive. Where I don't want this conversation to think that everything that gets posted is negative, because that's not true. There's a lot of positivity in those comments as well, but it's just those select few people that kind of you know you spoil the all the apples in the apple cart, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
um the thing that I find interesting, and there's another side to this, because and I'm gonna say that I before I jump into that, but I do think that these companies, the production companies, the media companies, they do bear some sort of responsibility. You have to protect your actors, your directors, and things of that nature. But at the same time, you got to toe the fine line. And just going back to the whole Rick and Morty Szechuan packet incident, this is where I think it was done in the wrong way, because you had those people, and they were running to McDonald's for these packets. Why, I have really no idea, but whatever. You know what I'm saying? And instead of, these companies like Adult Swim and McDonald's, stating that this is wrong actions to take, they were actually apologizing. You had McDonald employees that were being berated by these people that, "Oh, well, why don't you have it? I deserve to have it. It's my right. I'm not leaving the restaurant until I get one." People getting physically assaulted, and the response by McDonald's was like, "We understand how passionate your fans are. We apologize that we didn't have enough." That's not the the thing to take. You have to go out and say, "You know what? This is the wrong thing to do." And too many times these companies, instead of trying to anger the fan base, they kind of apologize. But I have to look at it on the other side, because this whole topic of conversation in terms of shutting off comments and not allowing people to speak their minds, breeds to this whole new thing that's been making the airwaves right now of cancel culture. Cancel culture is now the opposite of toxic fandom, where you have actors that portray a certain political or religious belief, or they make controversial comments, and the companies, they go out and they decry this, as they should. And if the thing continues, they get rid of people. And I think I'm talking about specifically Gina Carano. um Gina Carano made some very, very upsetting statements to some people, and she continued to do it after she was told by Disney, "You got to kind of cut it out." It's one of these things where it's like, Disney said, "We have to protect our properties. We cannot continue to have you making these controversial statements." And then, you know you had the backlash against Disney because they did that. What I find interesting is that the people who are the ones that are ripping Disney for cancel culture with Gina Carano, where were you when Colin Kaepernick was making his statement about racial injustice? Because in one sense, you're saying Gina Carano has the right to say what she believes in politically and otherwise, and she's an entertainer, but yet Colin Kaepernick, who I might add is a person of color and an athlete, does not have that right. Where do you draw the line on those two things?
Yeah, it's a very hypocritical kind of world that we're living in when it comes to this vitriolic fan base reactionary kind of situation that we have. I know Jose wanted to make a point. Yeah, go on.
So the Gina Carano situation is a really odd one, because I certainly enjoyed her character. And yeah, to a certain extent, if you're an individual, why shouldn't you be allowed to express your views, right? At the same time, you know, you could say like, oh, you could this is sort of a double-edged statement, sort of a statement, I should say, because if I were constantly tweeting and comparing my plight with my employer or my plight in general, while being employed by such a large public company, and I compared my plight to that of, like, I don't know, like people being persecuted by the Nazis, I think that my company would have a problem with that. And I think that the distinction that people have where freedom of speech applies to everything is ridiculous and it's stupid. Because
I
again,
agree.
these are the same people who want to cancel certain people for their views. These people have no idea what the First Amendment is. They don't know exactly what it entails. They don't understand that it's always been the case that in America, if a company doesn't like a statement that an employee makes, you could tell them, F off. Unless, I mean, there's certain protections against that, of course, but a company can make these choices as well. I think the other somewhat interesting thing to me that I kind of have to bring up, it piggybacks on what Walt was saying about the Szechuan sauce from the Rick and Morty situation with McDonald's, because the other side of the coin that I want to mention very quickly, and it brings up a property that Wolfie and I really, really love. But if you think about what people have said about, for example, the Rick and Morty fandom, it's actually generally accepted to be one of the most toxic fandoms like on the planet. And it's
I
this
agree.
wonderful show. It's a great
Yep.
show. It's a funny show. The creator,
It
Dan
is.
Harmon, supposedly really had none of these intentions in mind, but it's kind of one of the alt-right's favorite cartoons. And the other example I have to bring up is that one of the alt-right's favorite anime is Attack on Titan. Okay. And that's, to me, an example of what I said way back at the beginning of the podcast, of where people sort of appropriate things and say that that's only supposed to represent them, because the controversy surrounding Attack on Titan is that it's, I don't want to get too far into it or get, again, too political or too deep with this, but it's a thought that the author is anti-Semitic. Okay. If you don't go deep enough into the story, you might believe that. And I think that's also a part of this thing too, because there's a lot of fandom where we talked about this a little bit earlier too, where they don't give the property a chance. And I think we talked about this when it comes to Sonic the Hedgehog. So it's kind of an opposite side of this example, but they don't give it a chance. They don't read it. They don't consume it, and they just assign something to it. Now, again, it's partially about people assigning their own values to this thing. So it's really odd to me, as a phenomenon, that something that I read and watch and interpret so differently gets appropriated as something that says, like, hey, this is a white supremacist anime, and all the people in this anime are white supremacists, when, again, if you read it a little bit deeper, or I guess if that's not your mindset, which it's not mine, obviously, you look at it very differently in comparison. So I think that that's
Yeah,
another
I
aspect of
mean,
this.
I think that that's like one of the conversations also to be had, of how like an idea can be interpreted by two different parties, equally so for them, but equally against their opposition, if that makes sense. It's very, very interesting that that's the case. Eli has a point also. Eli, why don't you butt in real quick, and then I want to throw it to Walt as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back on something that Walt said with the comments thing, shutting down the comments.
Mm-hmm.
That's not gonna work because,
Right.
well,
You could still post something afterwards, right?
no, it's not even just that, because if you know how generally when somebody's going through something, people can comment nice things. If you have people emailing them bad things, nobody's gonna know. There's gonna be a lack of awareness about that. So there's not gonna be any like, I know what you're going through emails going through.
And the thing about it is that, again, I have to say this: the majority of those posts would be positive. It's just those few that, like everybody here has said, those trolls, that they purposely put these comments in there to kind of, put flames to the fire and see the response that they want. And there are times, I watch CNN, and with the right wing commentators, there are times that they literally don't even believe the comments that they're saying, but they're looking to get a rise and a reaction from people, and that's why they do it. So Eli, you're absolutely right. It kind of robs people of their ability to connect with their celebrities, that they love, and give positivity, and blocking those comments, like you said, kind of robs that of people.
This,
Mhm.
yeah. No, go on. Finish your point.
Okay, I'm just gonna make this one quick reference, and this is something that while I was kind
Oh,
of
right.
researching on this, and I'm gonna make it real quick, but I think it bears relevance to the conversation that we're having. While I was doing research on this topic before we got on, one of the things that kind of jumped out at me, and I didn't make the connection at the time, and it is a fantastic movie if you haven't seen it, but it's an older movie. And it's based on a book, and I'm talking about Stephen King, and the film is Misery. Misery
Hmm.
on its face is about toxic fandom, because you literally have a fan of the
His novels, right?
the novelist, and I forget the great actor's name. That
It
was
was James Caan and
James
Kathy
Caan.
Bates.
Thank you. Yes, James Caan.
Don't you worry, I got
She
the names
kidnaps
always up here.
the author because he is about to go kill her favorite character in the book. If that's not a signal of what toxic fandom is and can become, I don't know what is. And there's even a point in that story where she basically asks the author, who she's kidnapped and is holding hostage in her house, to burn the book that she's so against. He kind of
Symbolism.
saw this coming way, way, way back then. So, like I said, it was just an interesting thing that I think needed to be mentioned on this podcast, because we've been living with toxic fandom for quite a while. It's just really ramped up in the last maybe decade or so. And again, directly tied with the rise of social media.
I have a question, if I may, for the crew. Do you think that maybe the toxic fandom, because of the power they're given on social media, is over representative of the fan base in general? To put another way, is it is it just a few? Let's for let me know. For lack of a better term, is it just a few jackasses who are
Well,
hijacking the conversation, or is it a really large and dedicated contingent of jackasses?
what's that phrase? The squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I think that has a lot to do with it. I think you have this
Just like
it's a
making noise.
small but very loud and vocal group that really kind of ruins it for everybody.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, fandom can be and should be very positive, but again, you have these small group of individuals who either feel entitled, because that's kind of the attitude of our society right now, is like, I'm entitled to do anything. I have freedoms where I can say anything. The whole First Amendment thing. I have a right to say whatever I want, whenever I want, to who I want. Those people are the loudest. Those people are either those entitled people. Those people are either the ones that want to get the greatest amount of likes, the ones that want to kind of you know rustle the situation and start the fire and things like
Russell
that.
Feathers.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what it is. I think if you look at it, fandom really is, for the most part, fans that actually love their stuff, but there is that large, really loud and vocal group that is not a huge group, in my opinion, but they're the loudest.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is that social media makes it very easy for the
Absolutely.
small percentage of people to come together behind a simple hashtag like release the Snyder Cut. This has been a super interesting conversation to have. It's also been a really fun episode, I think, to record. having like this provocative, kind of a conversation and hearing all of your points and stuff, really makes me want to have more of these kind of episodes. I hope that like we can kind of mix some of these, discussions into our mix of reviews and geek outs and all that stuff. So, I think unless anybody else has any other final thoughts or points to make, um, I think we're all good.
I just want
I
to
think we're good.
I
Yeah, I
just
think
want to
we're all
make a
good.
final a point that kind of drives home why toxic fandom annoys me so much. And it's a story that I'll tell probably for the rest of my life, because one of the best movie experiences I think we all had, just because of how like communal and wonderful and how much fun people had in the movie, was when we watched Endgame. Like, isn't it great when the fandoms come together and like, yeah, you can criticize things. Like, I know people who still love the movie that hated a couple of aspects of it, but
Robert
like, think
Downey
about
Jr.
think about how great it is when you have those moments in the theater of like just a really pure fan base coming together. You have the Cap moment, when he picks up Mjolnir, and you have the whole crowd going freaking crazy. When you have this toxic fandom that just wants to basically like to PG this, they want to poop on everything that they don't like and just criticize it, and they take one aspect of it and they say that there's no redeeming qualities to the entire medium or to the entire movie, the entire TV show, because of one aspect of it, whether it's because a character is a color that I don't like, or a gender that I don't like, or says something that doesn't agree with my worldview. I just have to say, as my last thought to those toxic fans out there, you guys are boring. Just stop. You're boring. You're not cool. You're not interesting. You're not edgelords. You are boring. And I really, really hope that we get to a point as a society where we learn to not fuel the fire for some of these things. I don't think that we will, but like, come on, people. These guys are boring. They're just boring. They're just they're attention
I'm
people.
going to.
They just want attention. That's my final thought. Go ahead, man.
I'm going to hijack a little, because I never like to end on a negative note. I think I'm going to counter that, and I'll put money on this. I think that at some point, eventually, there will be a movement to combat the toxic fandom, and I always like to believe that good always prevails.
The fact that we're talking
And
about
I like
it
to think that there's more
good.
good than evil out there, and even though it might be misrepresented in proportion, I like to think that we can band together and fight this. Maybe it's a cause that we need to start kind of taking up.
I'm
Maybe
calling
Get
it
Geek starts
here.
taking up. So
Get
yeah,
Geek.
call it what?
I'm calling
Assemble.
it here. Hashtag cancel the toxic stands.
Ooh, I like that.
Cancel
hashtag.
toxic fandom. I like that. Let's
Yeah.
do it.
But then
Cancel.
guess
We're gonna
what?
cancel the cancelers.
Yeah, but then we're going to
Guess
be
what?
accused of
Yeah.
cancel
Wait.
culture when we do
Yeah.
that.
Wait.
When
It's
will it
a
end?
it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, really. You know?
Yeah. Tis very
Well, I don't know.
unfortunate.
To be continued. Maybe we'll have this discussion again in a year and see where we're at.
Yeah. When they release Justice League 2, we'll have this conversation.
All right. So I think that does it for us. Yeah. Once again, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. I think you guys, I think we all came away with maybe a little bit more information, some new insight, some new perspective on a couple points. I think we all generally agree on everything. But like I said, I hope that we are, moving towards towards more light. Anyways, thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for following us and staying, on this episode all the way to the end. Please like, rate, share, and subscribe. As we always ask, it's the best way to support us. The second best way is to also just, tag someone right now in our post and send us information, questions, comments. Hopefully not any toxic comments. And give us feedback so that we can keep getting better.
Please.
So,
Please do.
anyways, I guess that's it.
Yeah. I mean, let's sign off by saying, hey guys, let's just enjoy this golden age of media that we're getting, of superheroes and other stuff like that. Let's criticize it in a healthy way, And let's just be good fans, man. How much fun is it when we all get to be good fans and just like enjoy things and have these arguments and discussions in a positive way, right? So I mean, all y'all out there, all y'all geeks out there, stay safe, stay kind, and you know what to do. Just stay geeky, y'all. Stay geeky.